The Business of Esports podcast is brought to you by G Fuel, the official energy drink of esports and the original energy formula of gaming. Visit them online at gfuel.com.
Welcome to the Business of Esports podcast, where we explore the intersection of business and esports, the fastest growing entertainment phenomenon of this generation. Please welcome your hosts, Arda Okal, William Collis, and Paul Dawalibi. The Business of Esports podcast begins now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Business of Esports podcast. This is where we break down all the big news in the business of esports. Power, money, it's all here. My name is Arda Okal. I'm with Paul Dawalibi and William Collis. As always, we have an absolutely jam-packed episode, and we're going to get right to it because we have a lot to unpack. William, I'm going to start with you because you made a bold prediction last week all about Apex Legends. That's exactly where we're going to start. You had a very hot take about Apex Legends and the Battle Royale format, in particular EA and their introduction of this game. You said, I'm paraphrasing here, but you said, hey, 5 million people might enjoy this game, and it was dead on arrival. It's definitely not going to compete with Fortnite. Well, consider the numbers in the last 7 days, my friend. The player count in the first week, 10 million in its first 3 days. Respawn CEO Vince Zampella announced that the user count reached 25 million in its first week, with well over 2 million concurrent at its peak. IGN said Apex Legends nails Battle Royale squad gameplay and has the goods to challenge Fortnite's dominance. Now, in comparison, Fortnite broke 8 million last November, 16 months after its release. Of course, it was blazing the trail. Now is around the 200 million mark. PUBG Mobile is around that same amount at the moment. Now, there's a lot of announcements around Apex Legends in the first week. Very impressive. Twitch rivals Apex Legend challenges, $100,000 each. There's even popularity for Titanfall 2 multiplayer mode because of this. We're seeing a lot of announcements. William, what do you say about all of this success that Apex Legends is seeing in the first week? Do you think it is a Fortnite fatigue? Do you think that it is a welcome competitor? What are you making of all this?
Well, so I still have a pretty hot take on Apex Legends because I remember back in the days of MMOs, and I remember World of Warcraft was out there, right? We all remember World of Warcraft. It's still going. And I remember a time when pretty much every month a competitor MMO would launch into World of Warcraft. And they would announce huge user numbers and big growth, and content would come out saying, is this the World of Warcraft killer? And newsflash, as much as I hope we are, we're not playing Dark Age of Camelot or Warhammer Online, you know? There is a phenomenon with games, particularly free-to-play games, which Apex Legends is, which is tourism. People will come in. They will check it out. They will experience the game because it's free. Because in this case, there happens to be some particularly strong marketing behind it. And because, ultimately people like
Explain
variety.
the marketing, though, because it literally dropped without any fanfare. There was a leak over the weekend, but it literally dropped without any announcement.
In some ways,
Yeah.
That's the brilliant marketing, right? Like, everyone's been doing game launches pretty much the same way. You do a beta, like a public beta, you try and build some buzz, you get some streamers, then they go early access where people can buy the game or start playing the game. Like, the formula has been these slow builds of hype over long periods of time to try and get attention to your game. This was really stealth. I mean,
Yeah, I also think we misunderestimate how much coordination happened to just dropping. You know what I mean? I don't think it's like somebody hit play and said, go. All the gaming magazines, all the media outlets were ready to cover and say, did you know Apex Legends had launched?
Right.
I don't think it was accidental. Nobody in this day and age launches a game without a media plan. It doesn't happen. The fact that there was no pre-marketing was probably a decision on the part of the developer, and maybe I think it's turned out to be a fortuitous one to say, well, what happens if we put all our marketing not into pre-awareness but into conversion, because we're a free-to-play product, so we can get you as soon as you hear about it. But I just finished my own point. I still think it's about sustain. Did these numbers hold up? Because Warhammer Online had great numbers, but people drifted back to World of Warcraft. This is all about the sustain, and I'll stick with my bold prediction. I still don't see it. I don't think we'll be talking. Look, it's February 12th today. If on March 12th we're still talking about Apex Legends, I will apologize. But I am telling you right now, I don't.
You're giving yourself 1 month.
I think we're definitely still going to be talking about Apex Legends March 12th.
Look,
there's no doubt in my mind. It's a good game fundamentally. And these people, the developers of Apex, are really ballsy, I think. They're so confident in how good their game was that they didn't even put it out there before, right? Like, you looked at the Anthem launch. To me, that was the perfect example of, oh, great, I get to try the beta so I can not buy it when it comes out. These guys were so confident in the quality of their product, they just didn't even care. They said, here it is. And so, my view is Apex Legends will succeed for a number of reasons. They're really taking from the Fortnite playbook, the free-to-play piece, the kind of the fun, tongue-in-cheek characters and animations and things like that. But they've improved on a lot of key areas. It's a much better quality of big quality of life improvements you get in Apex that you don't have in Fortnite or PUBG that make the game just easier to play, fun to play. The characters means they can introduce new classes, new characters, and add longevity to the game, just like Dota or League or Overwatch or any of these games. The third piece is specifically for esports. You've got fewer players, not 100. You've got 64, whatever the number is. Easier to watch, easier to follow, easier to broadcast and commentate. It just lends itself to a more interesting esport, I think. And so my view is it will succeed. The free-to-play is definitely a big part of it, but I think they have enough there to make it last.
A couple of notes here, William, before we move on. This was an interesting tweet, I think, that encompasses everything you just said, from Poach, who said, it's a problem when Apex feels more competitively balanced than Fortnite on release. So they definitely did a good job there. Here's a thought on the marketing now. Another area where Apex has dominated Fortnite, at least this week, was on Twitch. So we saw many of the top Twitch streamers, whether it was because it was part of a campaign with EA, whether there was like a co-promotion there, or maybe because it's a new game and this will just automatically generate more views. We saw the top streamers, Fortnite streamers, streaming Apex this week. We saw Ninja, Dr. Disrespect, etc. Streaming Apex Legend. And as a result, let me just give you some numbers here. They had over 600,000 less total hours streamed than Fortnite in the past 7 days since the launch. But Apex Legend, incredibly, has had almost 11 million more total hours watched. Apex had an average viewership of 183,089 over that time, nearly 70,000 more than the 115,000 average viewer count of Fortnite. So, I mean,
look,
that's
those
impressive.
numbers are huge.
That's impressive.
I don't know if
maybe
that
not
growth
sustainable,
will
but very
continue.
impressive.
Very impressive numbers. And what they did do right was they involved a lot of these streamers in the process of developing and refining the game. A lot have come out and said, like Shroud said, he was consulted in terms of weapon recoil and things like that. Like, they actually reached out to people to try and get good advice, and I think that bodes well for the game. I think there are two stories here, though, that no one's talking about. Everyone's talking about Fortnite and is this the Fortnite killer? But what happens to Call of Duty Blackout? Like, to me, this kills Call of Duty
What about
Blackout
PUBG?
a lot. Well, PUBG will always still has kind of the only place of hyper realistic battle royale game, whereas Call of Duty sort of happens in the future, like Apex.
Isn't it interesting though that really the narrative this week has been Apex is competing with Fortnite? There has been no mention
because
of
that's
PUBG
the sensational story
in the conscience.
Or I think Call of Duty is, again, the one that's going to suffer more.
Okay.
And there's very little mention of that. I think the business story here that very few are talking about is this is like, talk about Hail Mary pass, fourth quarter lifesaver for EA here, right? They're on a string of bad press. Their stock price got hammered just a few days ago. Anthem almost guaranteed will be a disaster. And this is like, talk about pulling a rabbit out of a hat on this one and saving their quarter, probably saving their entire year. I hear EA executives everywhere sighing a big sigh of relief. And to me, that's the most interesting story. The flip side is, what does it mean for Blizzard and Activision, right? They're already having a bad day.
We're going to talk about that.
We're going to talk about
dive
that.
into it later.
But this makes their day that much worse.
So just to give people an idea on the numbers, on February 4th, which was Apex release date, $88.43 was the stock price. February 8th when you started to hear those impressive user numbers jumped up to 9760.
There you go, right? Like it's the market responding to what's going on, and Blizzard Activision stock is going to do the exact opposite.
William, what do you make of the fact that the two founders of Vince Zampella and Epic Games co-founder and vice president Mark Rain. Mark Rain has been tweeting about Apex Legends. He says he loves it. He plays it several times a week. This is a quote: "Several times a week at least I've been playing. Over the holidays I played every day, played a little today, and we'll play again tonight. I love it." Vince jokingly said, "I owe you drinks next time I see you." So they're playing nice on social media. But if you're in the Epic Games camp, William, take us into those boardroom meetings. What do you think people are saying?
Well, I think a couple things here. So first of all, I think it's great that there's such a strong relationship and friendship between the leaders of the companies. I think it speaks to the fact that they're both probably pretty nice people who appreciate games. Certainly Vince, I know, is a gamer at heart. But, look, like, I think if you look at the reality of what's happening to us on the ground, I mean, if you, as of 3 days ago, I don't know if it's still the case, but if you Googled Apex Legends, Fortnite Battle Royale was the first thing to pop up, in the paid advertising space. So while they might play nice on Twitter, absolutely Fortnite is out to cut the legs out from Apex, and they have a lot of money to do it. Now, I still go back. I'm surprised you guys are so bullish on Apex. And I say this again, the numbers are definitely impressive. The game is definitely excellent. I think I said this in the last podcast. I think that the Respawn guys are probably the best guys to do shooters ever. I thought Titanfall and Titanfall 2 were incredible games. I have no doubt, and I don't think I had it out last time, that it wouldn't be a great game. I just think, and this maybe goes back to my whole thesis on esports, but I don't think the best games win. I think the best games win are the ones that have the cultural zeitgeist and the presence, and I think Fortnite has achieve such a level of cultural saturation. It doesn't matter if you're better than Fortnite. That's not the challenge anymore. But Fortnite is the default.
But William, is there room in this genre, in this space, for two zeitgeist defining games?
Well, that's the really interesting thing, because whenever I hear about something like, the CEO, like when you talked about the CEOs playing nice with each other, I always go back to Match.com and eHarmony. Do you guys know those online dating websites?
Let's the married guys talk about Match.com and eHarmony. Go ahead, William.
I'm also married, so
yeah, we're all there's three married dudes talking about dating websites.
As I know,
no one wants to admit they know anything about it.
Tinder, it's like Match.com, but I bring it up very seriously because a Harvard Business School professor of mine, Hannah Halliburtt, did a lot of research on Match.com and eHarmony, and she was a big mentor of mine. She's an amazing academic. But, she had all this research that uncovered that actually the best thing that ever happened to Match.com was eHarmony, because they got two very, very different pools of users. One were people who were looking for marriage. The other was people who were looking for casual dating. And the presence of the competitor bifurcated the market and allowed people who wanted to get married to match with more people who wanted to get married, and people who wanted to casual date to match with more people who, wanted to have a casual date. So it was the best thing ever. I wonder if Apex Legends, being more of a competitive pro-styled shooter, might not clear the way for Fortnite to grow further, because you start to get rid of those bad experiences of the pro player running and killing 400 people, and you start to have Fortnite be positioned as the casual, everybody come on in marshmallow concert version, which is more about a community and experiential gaming. I could easily see that happening, and maybe that's some of what's going on, that they think the games are different enough. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but I would be really cool to see something like that happen, because I know economists and business PhDs who study network effects would flip out for another Match.com eHarmony example.
I mean, competition's always good for business, William, right? Like that's the message here. And I think it will be good for Fortnite. I don't think Fortnite's going anywhere. It's too entrenched right now to just disappear. I think, like I said, Call of Duty is much more at risk of just disappearing as a consequence of Apex, because it's a much more direct substitute, whereas Fortnite has more going for it to last. The interest.
When we say disappear, we should note that maybe currently, but it's not
like
be
culturally relevant.
Yeah, like Counter-Strike still has an opportunity to reinvent itself or introduce something that brings it back into the public conscience. It's not like it's just going to go away forever. right? I mean, there's still, because it's still such a popular game, it does still have an opportunity to get back to that prominence that maybe Apex is taking away from at the moment.
Right, but right now Apex is sucking all the air in the room, and if I'm Epic, I don't like that. And I think it's interesting. I kind of laughed to myself when I saw the rise of Apex this week, because if you remember, I think it was like podcast episode 1 or 2, it was one of the first ones we did together. I said, if I'm Epic and I just raised $1 billion, what I'd be doing right now is building Fortnite 2, and I'd have it out basically next year. Those were kind of my words verbatim. And I think in the context of the current threat from Apex, I think I was right. I think Fortnite is going to be on their toes. They're going to have this competitive pressure now, and they will have to respond in some way. They will either have to define themselves differently, so they're more the marshmallow virtual space casual game, for the kids or whatever else, or they will have to compete head on and say, we're as much a legitimate esport and competitive shooter as you are, and here's what we're going to do, and we're going to balance the game, and we're going to make these changes. But I think the reality is what they need to do is reinvent themselves, because I think if Apex has taught us anything, it's that you need the combination of good game and good marketing and all those things, but new always gets attention. The new shiny thing always gets attention.
And that goes to William's point about sustainability and whether or not we will still be talking about Apex in a month. And I'm with you. I think we will. I think that user base will stay consistent, and we will hear esports announcements for Apex Legends. We will see a lot of money thrown at. This is just me speculating, but I really feel like they're going to build on the momentum that they have built in the past week.
I totally
in the first
agree.
Week. Let me just give an update here. The stock price as we record this on Tuesday afternoon right now is at 101.83. So it still continues to rise. William, let me ask you about this. There's a couple of business-related questions that I would like to ask about Apex Legends. The platforms that Apex is currently not on is mobile. No iOS, no Android at the moment. Respawn told The Verge at a press event prior to the game's launch that there aren't plans just yet to release the game on those platforms. But, William, based on the numbers that you have seen and how impressive the numbers are without those platforms, do you think that this is already in the works, that they are already planning on a mobile release for this game, or do you think that the plan will shift so that will be included as well in the future?
Well, I would say I hope not. I think the space that Apex Legends is carving out for itself right now, in as much as it is competitively differentiated, is a polished, competitive shooter. And I think mobile is great for accessibility, for everybody, for experience. Mobile's great for checking in on a Marshmallow concert. It's not good for precision aiming and tactical squad play. And I would hope that these guys are cognizant that their competitive advantage right now is being a tier 1 polished shooter, and leaning into that. And I don't see mobile as being strategically synergistic with it. Now, I can bet you.
But there's not 25 million people who are top tier first person shooter.
But there aren't 130 million League of Legends people who are top tier, but that's
fair.
how many tuned in to the last World Championships.
And look how Blizzard got crucified for Diablo Mobile. I mean, that would just be the biggest mistake they could possibly make. The only way I could see that happening is if some bean counter at EA says, "Hey, we can milk this some more. Let's do mobile." But I don't think anyone in their right mind thinks mobile is the right platform for this game.
No, they'll do it eventually because you have to. I hope it's more of a Fallout Shelter style experience, and not
like a companion game, maybe.
Yeah, maybe with Titans in it. I'm just saying, Apex Legends, please bring back the Titans.
There was some talk of that this week.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe it's a DLC. Who knows?
Yeah.
Last question about this one. I thought this was a very interesting thought from Al Smizzle on Twitter, a fellow ESPN contributor in the daily fantasy space, but also dabbles in video games. He said EA sold 24 million copies of FIFA 18 last year at $60 per unit. Apex Legend, also an EA product, has gathered over 25 million users in 1 week as a free-to-play game with in-game purchases. Would EA make more money if future games that they're selling for $60 a pop, for example, FIFA 20, was free to play? And I guess more generally, I'm thinking, will people see this success maybe not necessarily seeing how much revenue was generated in the first week, but these user numbers, and say, maybe we need to adopt this model, not just for the Battle Royale, Paul, but for all types of video games. What do you think?
The assumption there is that all free-to-play games will succeed and have huge player bases, because that business model depends on quantity, on a critical mass of players that are spending money on a daily or weekly basis on skins and cosmetics and whatever else is being sold in the game. If you don't have 25 million players or 10 million or even 2 million, how do you recoup all the development costs for that game? So, that's going to be, I think, a tough one for the publishers to justify because of the sort of the inconsistent nature of game success. It's hard to predict which games will succeed and which won't. And so if everything goes free to play, what does that mean for their business overall if, 8 out of 10 of them just don't have a player base and you don't recoup your investment on those games?
That's over $1 billion. Of course, from a financial point of view, that's very difficult to just walk away from, to try and change your change the model in order to hope for more money. But it's a lot of money already that you're receiving. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, in a way. But I wonder is the risk worth the reward, for example, or even maybe make it a $30 product with a lot of in-game purchases.
I in general have always disliked the trend personally because I thought it incented companies to release somewhat unfinished games, right? Like you can put something out there relatively cheap and hope you make your money back on the cosmetics. I think Apex has really kind of bucked that trend, and Fortnite before it, in the sense that these are relatively solid games, well-built games, finished games when they shipped, and so you're getting a lot of value for no dollars up front as a gamer. What I see happening most likely is the big publishers like Activision, for example, trying this with Call of Duty, where, is there a way next year they can charge half as much or zero for Call of Duty and make a ton of money on cosmetics and hope that it cuts off sort of the Fortnite and Apex Legends at the knees. I don't know how they're going to fight back with their AAA titles other than going free to play on them.
William?
Yeah, I think pretty much all games should be free to play. So I just think the business model makes a lot more sense that way. I mean, if there is a viable path to monetization from incremental sales, games should be free to play.
William, do you buy a lot of cosmetics in game?
I have to tell you, I don't buy a ton of cosmetics, but I think you're asking us the question differently, which is, do I monetize well in free to play games? Yes, I do. Hearthstone, oh my god.
Yeah,
Magic
but Hearthstone
Arena,
is more pay to win almost, or pay to compete.
Oh yeah, but
right. We're talking about pure cosmetics.
Well, what I'm saying more generally,
because I think the business model depends on a small minority essentially paying for the game for the majority.
I'll give you an example. I don't pay for just clothing on my characters, but I will pay for a new character. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, I did pre-order to get the Piranha Plant character because I wanted to play as Piranha Plant. I thought that was cool, but I did pay the extra money.
Well, first of all, if you did not pre-order the Piranha Plant, you can stop listening to this podcast right now because this is not for you. But yeah, no,
the Piranha Plant even has little feet, by the way. I don't know if you noticed that. It's a very, very, very nice touch.
The Piranha Plant is amazing. But look, the thing is, guys, and I'm just trying to step back to make the larger business point here. The free-to-play business model should be more effective because it allows for more price discrimination, right? And if you have a game that has enough hooks, whether it's cosmetics, new characters, experience point boosts, whatever it is, whatever monetizes the particular demographic of player you're going after, if you have enough hooks, it should be it will be, and it will monetize theoretically better as a free-to-play game because, again, you're able to sell across the entire spectrum of the demand curve if we go back to economics 101. I do think there's a problem that there are games that have no business being free-to-play going free-to-play that don't have ways to drive cosmetics or other monetization and just adopt the business model because people catch on to it. And I also think that free-to-play can be harmful to games because it can lead to an over-reliance on ancillary or low effort upgrades that people will spend money on anyway because of artificial factors like rarity or perceived value. golden skins in League of Legends come to mind, right? But in principle, I would like most gaming to go free to play. I think it's better. And by the way, I think it's silly that Call of Duty is priced. I think it's silly that Overwatch was priced. I still think, particularly after Apex Legends, by the way, if you didn't think Overwatch was going to go free to play this year, brace yourself, because that news is coming.
To me, it has to be one or the other, William, right? Like, I think that's the excellent point you're making. Either charge $60 for your game and have everything in it already, or and just maybe you have unlocks but that don't cost any money, or be totally free to play. But this kind of half pregnant business of where you charge and then you charge for additional cosmetics seems to not work as well.
Or in my mind, the worst example of a monetization model tied to a game, and it's a game I loved, so I say this with hesitance, is Deus Ex Mankind Divided. If anyone played that game, you paid $60 for a retail copy, $80 or $90 for the premium version, and then you could buy upgrades like Praxis kits to level up your character faster in the game, which completely broke the game and circumvented the carefully allocated progression system. That is the classic example of people trying to marry a marketplace model into a game that is not designed to support it, and as a result undermines both.
I will say, William, I think if the entire industry goes free to play, and I hope it doesn't, but I think if it does, you're going to see a lot more publishers go out of business. We will see a lot more games not pushing the envelope really, but more just trying to cash in. And I think you will see a lot of the smaller game developers go away, right? Because then if everything goes free to play, the only guys who can really take risk are the ones that have established revenue streams, right? Like if you're already making a few $100 million a month from Fortnite, who cares if you launch 2 or 3 other free to play games that fail?
So this might be a good time to bring up this point. So I had a lot of rapid fire topics at the end of this podcast because it was such a busy week, but I'll bring it up now because this is exactly what we're talking about. This is from the Golden Gate Express. Some Twitch streamers, including former CSGO Pro Summit, are shining a light on their displeasure of day one DLC and microtransactions in free-to-download games like Fortnite, Apex Legends, Hearthstone, etc. Quote, they don't care about their reputation, man, or at least whoever is leading the way over there doesn't care about reputation. The article compares this practice to being like having to buy keys for a brand new piano. So what do you think? Shady business practice, or this is just the way the business is going?
It's a legitimate business practice, but it's risky for the publisher, and the gamer potentially gets an inferior product in the long run. So it's not without its risks here. Like it sounds nice that we can forever into the future play every game for free, but there's no free lunch here.
I also think our competitive reference point is wrong. I don't see it as like keys to unlock the piano. I see it as like leather seats in your car. Like we don't get mad at car dealers for saying, well, for another $400 you can have heated seats and leather seats and rear view We're used to the idea in some industries that you have a base product and you can pay to upgrade it. I think we have a culture in gaming right now that is allergic to this idea of a tiered product version, because we still see games as having a quality and fairness tied to them, and we don't like injections of real world challenges like capital or income or things like that differentiating the player base.
Yeah.
But the reality is they exist everywhere else, and they will continue to exist and grow in games. And I think they're a net good, because if they extract more money from game players, we will get better games with bigger marketing budgets doing cooler things. And that's what I'm behind.
You can, if there's any topics or any angles of topics that we have talked about that you would like to hear, feel free to yell at us on Twitter. Follow us at Biz Esports. Tell us what we missed. Tell us what you would like us to talk about. We will pick it up on the next podcast. Our second topic has to do with Blizzard and some challenges happening there. According to Bloomberg, Activision Blizzard plans to announce on Tuesday a round of job cuts that could number in the hundreds. The layoffs could be part of a restructuring effort as the company faces sluggish sales, according to unnamed sources to Bloomberg. Now, the company has seen some shakeups and movement in the executive suites recently. Former Chief Financial Officer Spencer Newman going to Netflix is one example. Former Blizzard President and CEO Mike Morhaime stepping down and leaving the company for good on August 7th. According to Tweaktown, it'll take care not to interrupt games development. The layoff should only affect non-gaming departments like marketing, PR, QA testing, customer service, as Activision Blizzard ramps up new game projects. So we have been hearing about possible new IP, new video game secret projects in the works for Activision Blizzard. But this is certainly, when you hear stuff like this is certainly disconcerting, right, Paul?
I mean, what do you think they're going to say, Arda? We got nothing going on, not working on anything, like sell our stock, everyone go home. Look, the writing's on the wall here. It doesn't matter what they're saying. I've been saying for a while now that this company seems like it's being really mismanaged, and there are some questionable decisions being made about games, about initiatives. The layoffs are not surprising, especially in the context of Heroes of the Storm, Esports shutting down. I'm sure there are some people there. My bigger concern for Blizzard is it seems, A, they have no response to the Apex Legends and Fortnites of the world. B, Overwatch player base is obviously in decline. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that. And C, Overwatch League is literally suffocating the life out of itself. I don't know if you saw just recently, like literally a day or two ago, the show matches for Overwatch League. Did you follow what was going on with those show matches?
Fill us in.
So what happened was they arranged some show matches between some of the new teams, some of the old teams, essentially like to tease the new season 2 of Overwatch League. And what ended up happening was the guys, the pros on these teams, kind of played for the memes. Like there were guys playing Torbjorn that were like Reinhardt mains, and they were playing the game just to have fun and put on a good show. And Blizzard came down hard on this, and they apologized and said, no, this is not right. This should never have happened. These guys were throwing, right? And it seems that every time Overwatch League has an opportunity to have something of a personality, good or bad, they squash it before it has any chance to live. Like for once, frankly, since the beginning of Overwatch League, I saw personality from players that seemed to have none. And Blizzard cracked down on it. Like they only want robots playing the game in a box, and they want to control everything. And they don't realize that they're destroying their own product here. That they've forgotten this is entertainment first. People watch football games to be entertained. And I don't think it's entertaining anymore. So you combine kind of bad decisions like Diablo Mobile, you combine Overwatch sort of ignoring player comments and player base in decline. You find Overwatch League sort of doing some questionable things about squashing personalities. And you go, wait a second, who's at the wheel here? Who's driving Blizzard today? Because they have the opportunity to do great things with their IP and the employees who work there and the creators who work there. But there's no leadership, it seems. I think firing a few hundred people is not going to solve their problems. And for every dollar EA rises and Apex continues to succeed, I think we're going to see Blizzard going in the exact opposite direction.
But meanwhile, William, we see great announcements for Blizzard and Overwatch League, like Overwatch League signing a massive deal with Coca-Cola, right? I mean, Coca-Cola is now the first non-alcoholic beverage of the Overwatch League, and this is huge because Coca-Cola is what is the brand awareness for Coca-Cola? 100%. Everybody knows what Coca-Cola is, and this is a great.
The Super Bowl has Coca-Cola. They're stuck with Pepsi,
And Pepsi has traditionally been the more esports busy brand. And now you hear an announcement like this, which to me is huge for esports, not to mention Overwatch League. So, I mean, I feel like for the negative announcements of the layoffs, you do have optimism with deals like this. Do we not, William?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm the opposite of Paul. I'm so bullish on Activision Blizzard. Like I just think they're the greatest company. I think they have an incredible bank of IP. Transparently, a lot of my friends are in the leadership of that company, but I think they're smart people who know what they're doing. I just can't say, it's definitely true that Activision Blizzard is going through a rough patch right now. A lot of factors have compounded together, some of them related, some of them not, to create a very difficult time for a company. But big companies go through difficult times. And the reality is, I still think the Overwatch League, you can say, oh, we want about 25 million players for Apex Legends. The Overwatch League is still taking the most foundational cement-laying steps to produce a viable esport of any esport right now, even League of Legends in the world, right? They're still laying the groundwork there. Activision Blizzard, it hasn't had other new titles to follow it up, but clearly they are having things, they have to have things in development. And I think they had the IP and the player awareness to drive it, not to mention a wholly owned distribution platform in Battle.net. I will say, I think the most interesting thing is ask yourself this. So if you look at Activision's Blizzard stock today, and you look at Activision Blizzard stock as Overwatch was launching, it's the exact same value for the company, give or take $2 or $3, right? We're talking about a $40 valuation for the company. Do you believe intuitively that all the positive value that the Overwatch League has created has been wiped out in the last 3 months, 4 months by the events taking place at Activision?
The stock is, yeah, you're right. The stock is a little bit higher than, say, January 2017. So It's been steadily rising for the last 5 years. And we're experiencing a little bit of a dip now as we get into 2019.
I don't think, and granted, there's been some really bad news recently, but I don't think all of that bad news undoes Overwatch, right? I think this is a market overreaction. And I think as soon as Activision Blizzard announces a hot new game, and they will, you're going to see a very big bump in their stock, and you're going to see people asking the same thing that the Apex Legends headlines right now. Is League of Legends done? Because Heroes of the Storm 2 is out. I mean, that's my dream. I know that's what
but
I'm
William, don't you think that this is like a systemic problem in gaming? Like EA, all of a sudden, all of the sins are forgiven because Apex Legends exists, right? There are not that many industries where you see that so consistently like you do in gaming, where, hey, it doesn't matter all the bad decisions Blizzard's making. You'll see when the new game comes out and it's a great game and everyone's playing it, like, we'll forgive all the bad business decisions that happened before that.
Oh, Paul, I'm going to turn this around on you right now, because this is a hate-driven industry. You come from venture capital. That's what venture capital is. You invest in 9 companies. They're disasters. You invest in one, the 10th one, it's worth $1 billion.
The secrets revealed on the business of esports.
Not supposed to talk about that, William.
Yeah, but but seriously, I mean, there are plenty of hit-driven industries. Movies are the same way, by the way. And there are industries that work this way. You're only as good as your last big success. But if you have a company that has creative talent, if you have a company if you're a company that nurtures that talent, theoretically, the hits should average out over the years, and you should have a viable business. And we don't see headlines like head of Overwatch leaves Activision Blizzard, head of Diablo leaves Activision Blizzard, right? We're not seeing a talent flight in the design and game, area, which is where I would be concerned. If that were happening, I would say that company's really sick. But aside from the departure of Ben Brody and some of the guys from Hearthstone, which was really what kicked off this whole fiasco, and I think is a justified concern for Activision Blizzard, aside from that, you don't see that being the story here. You really just see a company that doesn't have a whole bunch of new products and has existing products that are struggling to grow into the next stage of life. And that will right itself over time.
See, this is... I'll make one last comment on this. I would love to see the industry move towards more of a platform model than a hit-driven business, right? Like where Activision is Facebook and EA is Google, and right, like where you don't have such lumpy revenues that depend on hits, but where you build really sustainable platforms that release new content and new games, and they should all be of some quality that generate dollars for the business. Like, always depending on some Hail Mary, to me, is in some ways part of the bad management problem.
But I
and just because the movie business does it or the venture capital business does it doesn't mean all of us are right.
Well, you're right. Everybody, look, the market abhors risk. Everybody would love it if everything could be a smooth flat line for revenues going up and to the right. But the reality is, particularly in marketing intensive industries, and industries where there's a disproportionate value to being first versus second place, which gaming is, it's more of a winner take all market because of network effects. They will be hit driven. And this is where, like, I just go back to the academic research. Like, there's a phenomenal professor at HBS, Anita Elbers. She has an amazing book, Blockbusters. Does a very nice job of laying out the foundations for why. And by the way, it's not just gaming, it's music. It's really any creative industry. They're just, the markets are designed to lead towards this boom or bust model. And it can bring people under if you fall into a bad patch of randomness, or you have structural problems that are harming your development pipeline. You will have a bunch of failures in a row and go under. But I think the thesis is, over time, the platform average, you are a platform business, you average over out. And that's why, by the way, if you go on Yahoo Finance or whatever you use, I guess nobody uses Yahoo Finance anymore, so I look dumb. But if you look at Activision Blizzard stock price over time, it's up and to the right. It looks like a nice clean line because overall it is a healthy business, albeit a hit driven business. And yes, there are periods or quarters where it goes down, but overall it's a pretty clean story of growth.
Follow us on Twitter at Biz Esports. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast, whatever podcatcher you use. When you give us a 5-star rating and a favorable review, it helps others like you find this podcast, business fans, esports fans, business of esports fans. Also, thebusinessofelsports.com. Check it every single day. You'll get some news items to make sure you are on top of everything in the world of the business of esports. Many of those topics we talk about on this podcast. Those two topics were so meaty, we had to give it the attention they deserved. So we're going to do a rapid fire on the remaining topics here. One thought each, gentlemen, on these following topics. We actually missed this one last week. This came out last week. I think this is absolutely fantastic. I think that this should be the norm for all future sports/esports/event presentation, and I think we are going in that direction. Overwatch League Season 2 All Access Pass for $15 for the whole season. The Verge explains it well. It lets you watch games from multiple viewpoints, switching between them at will. They include first-person viewpoint of any player, the standard broadcast view, and a customizable 3-feed template where you can add an overhead map alongside 2 other feeds. Blizzard tested this during the Overwatch World Cup. I think this is absolutely brilliant, transformative, paradigm-shifting, forward-thinking in action. William, let's start with you on this one.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to what I said just minutes earlier. I think the Overwatch League, more than any other esport, is taking steps to lay the ground floor cement basement that you need to build a sustainable game. And interactive viewership and interactive cameras is something that's important to be able to following the flow of the game. It's something that every esport, I agree with you, needs and should have. And it's something, here again, Overwatch is first to market with. Just like, by the way, they were first to market with obvious things too, like team uniforms. I think it's wonderful. I do think it raises a larger question, though. And here I will say, I don't love the pricing here. I understand the desire to price it. I understand that there's a need to have buy-in. But I do think this is a little bit of what I said earlier about Overwatch shouldn't cost $60. It should be free to play. This, to me, feels like, again, something where there's a desire to go to an old retail box model and get an upfront fee for this, where this is really something that should be, honestly, I feel like a baseline part of the viewing experience.
I think it will be eventually, but I think that today you have enough of this is catering to the 10% hardcore audience today. I agree with that because they will devour this kind of content. I do think eventually we will see this as a standard, sort of like what ESPN is doing with the college football championships. They have multiple different telecasts across their channels. They have the main broadcast, then they have a sideline cam, then they have coaches in a room analyzing the plays. They have a fun broadcast. There's broadcast in different languages. I think that we're going to see this with all different presentations, especially as these properties go digital. Paul?
I mean, William, I'm surprised you say that because this is kind of the free to play model, but for a league, in the sense that you can watch the Overwatch League games for free on Twitch. It doesn't cost you anything. Or you can pay $15 and get some skins and emotes and Overwatch League tokens and some extras. Now, I think the the interactive viewer piece of the All Access Pass is Overwatch League's killer app. I think it's the one thing that saves Overwatch League Season 2 from being totally irrelevant. That this is what's going to get people, I think, really excited about watching Overwatch League and esports in general. It's brilliant, and I think it's the thing that saves them this season.
Yeah, but I mean, so by the way, and yes, you can criticize me all you want for being inconsistent, but the thing I believe here is that, to your point, this is a killer app. I think this is a really, really great tool that's come out here. Why, when you are a game that wants to be driving more viewers, that knows that you need to be having a significant increase in viewership over Season 1, why would you bury your best viewership tool behind a $15 paywall? I mean, how many people would watch football if I had to pay $5 to see the down line and, $10 to see the score and the clock? I just feel like this is so good. It is not an aesthetic add-on. It's not something you bolt on after. It's not a new hero. This is fundamental to the viewing experience, and it should be baseline. It's that good. That's a compliment to Activision.
The league needs to show revenue to the teams, William. That's the bottom line. If I've bought in Season 2 at an inflated price from Season 1, you got to show me something.
So show revenue. Totally buy it. Hear that point. Show revenue from Coke. Show revenue other ways. I get it. And believe me, I imagine there is enormous pressure to monetize and show revenue. I get it. But at the same time, you're a broadcasting network. That fundamentally, you're a content creator with League. Like, you should be leveraging the tools you have built for eyeballs first and monetizing the eyeballs. And to me, this is so, I guess if this were a less good tool, I would feel less strongly about it. I think
this is going to become the norm for free. I
William,
think.
it says they're not
Eventually.
confident about the audience. I think that's what it says. They're hedging their bets.
So if it becomes a success this year, if there's hundreds of thousands of people signing up for this, for example, I could see the revenue coming elsewhere. Maybe Twitch says we will make this part of the overall package and increase the broadcast fee per year.
Yeah, but also, like, what a weak hedge, guys. And again, I love Activision Blizzard. So again, I'm their biggest fan, but what a weak hedge. Like, you're worried that there might not be a market for something, so you charge an entry fee to further dilute the market. A lot of people aren't going to realize how great this is without sampling it. I feel so strongly this is such a big step forward. It's so cleverly designed. It's so structured. Put this front and center and show people League of Legends doesn't have this. Fortnite doesn't have this. This is why we have Coke as our sponsor. Put this front and center. I don't know. I'm just saying.
William, before you detach from us, let's get your thoughts on this real quick. This is from Tweaktown. Microsoft Xbox Gaming earned $4.2 billion from gaming between the period of October and December 2018, representing a healthy 8% year-over-year rise. These earnings were primarily driven by software like full game sales both in-store and on Xbox Live, as well as tremendous growth in online subscriptions like Xbox Game Pass and Xbox Live Gold. The software growth was primarily driven by a single third-party game, likely Red Dead Redemption 2, which has sold 23 million copies. The company's CEO, Satya Nadella, said that a $10 a month Xbox Game Pass subscription is engaging record users. Monthly active users reached a record 64 million, with the highest number of mobile and PC users to date. Xbox Game Pass subscribers and Mixer engagement also hit new all-time highs.
Yeah, I mean, what's to react to there? It's great news for Microsoft. I think it's a strong example of them continuing to do what they're best at doing, which is act as a great platform and monetize the best competitive online experience.
Are you surprised by the number?
I mean, 8% is not that huge, particularly given you had the Red Dead Redemption one. Something. No, I'm not surprised. I was more surprised by the thing I thought you were going to say, Arda, coming up next, which is Xbox Live's coming to Switch.
Yes, so Xbox Live will soon be accessible on Nintendo Switch, iOS, and Android devices, which is the big departure from you can only find us on our platform.
Yes, exactly. And to me, that's really interesting because that's Microsoft and other parties like Nintendo recognizing, you know what, this isn't just an operating system, to get Xbox Online. This is really a very well-constructed service to facilitate gameplay, games distribution, content creation, etc. And we're going to have to let this on our platform because it's too difficult to do this ourselves. And to me, I think that's the really exciting thing here. It's not that the service is good and so it's getting 8% growth, particularly on the back of a big game. It's that the service is so good, it's getting inside other walled gardens. And you remember, I mean, the whole original thesis of consoles in the home was there a walled garden to control sales to end users. It's incredible to me. And I think it's more a short sight on Nintendo's part. And bluntly, like everybody was saying, for Nintendo for years, where's your mobile offering? I think, again, this is an example of a really short-sighted play that Nintendo still conceives of itself as a game developer and nothing else. I think it's a great move for Microsoft that they're there. I think it's a very, very dangerous precedent for other console providers, particularly Nintendo, because I'm surprised you would let a fox like this in your henhouse,
Paul, last thought?
Look, I think you have to give a lot of credit to Satya Nadella at Microsoft in the way he's transformed the entire business, but the added emphasis that he's put on gaming in the last few years. And look, Microsoft is great at being a platform, and they're great with the online stuff. I think that's what Nintendo doesn't do well. And so, I mean, I'm in total agreement here with William that I'm a little confused why Nintendo would do this. In my mind, if they're going to do that, they might as well just stop building hardware altogether and
exactly what I was going to say.
And just focus on building games, right?
Xbox, yeah.
Yeah, like why even bother if you're basically going to give the attention to someone else? What all these companies are really jockeying for is attention. And the console was a cheap entry point to get people's attention and to own that attention and be able to sell them other things. Look, I think all of the hardware is already commoditized, whether it's Xbox or the Switch or your phone or your PC. Fundamentally, it's all basically the same hardware inside of all of these things. And so it's all that matters right now is the services and the online experience and the content you get around it. So, I'm not surprised because Microsoft is good at all those things, and they're getting even better at all those things.
That was a really good episode of the Business of Esports podcast. We dove into a lot. I'm sure this is not the last time we're going to talk about Apex Legends. Maybe we'll talk about it for
what's a better idea, Arda? What? We should do it's trios, right? In Apex Legends, you play as a team of 3. We should do a Business of Esports stream where we stream the 3 of us playing as a squad in Apex Legends.
Oh my God, I would love that, particularly because I can finally show Paul how much better at aiming I am.
If you don't mind,
and I feel like I'm going to be carrying pretty soon.
Yeah, if you don't mind me weighing down the team, no problem at all. Did we miss a topic you wanted us to talk about? Then you can yell at us on Twitter at BizEsports, also now on Instagram. Also at Biz Esports. Let us know if there's a topic we missed, you really want to hear Paul and William's opinion on something that we did not discuss on the podcast. Let us know on social media and we will talk about it on the next podcast. For Paul and William, I'm Arda. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Business of Esports podcast. Check us out at thebusinessofelsports.com and on Twitter at BizEsports.